personality among us. So coming forward, the another privilege for us is that Honorable Chairman, the father of the organization of Vikrant Group of Institution, he also joined us. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time. I know that you were busy, you were traveling somewhere, but somehow you have managed your time. So it's really, uh, uh, good to us that you have joined, sir. So I would like to request Honorable Chairman, sir, to please give opening remarks and welcome our guest of today's session, respected Chairman, sir.
धन्यवाद केडी। आज विश्व पर्यावरण दिवस के इस अवसर पर आयोजित विक्रांत के इस मंच पर पर्यावरण के उपलक्ष्य में इस वेबिनार में WWF के वेटलैंड के विशेषज्ञ डॉक्टर अमित दुबे, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत और अभिनंदन करता हूं मैं विक्रांत समूह की ओर से। साथियों, पर्यावरण आज विश्व भर का एक चिंतन का विषय है और चिंतनीय विषय हो गया। वर्तमान महामारी जब 14 महीने से हम झेल रहे हैं, इसके पीछे कहीं न कहीं एक पर्यावरण का विनाश और पर्यावरण का प्रदूषण एक आवश्यक कारण भी है। हम दोषारोपण किसी पे भी करते रहे, लेकिन हम अपनी करनी का ही फल भोग रहे हैं। मैं चूंकि प्रदूषण नियंत्रण मंडल मध्य प्रदेश में क्षेत्रीय अधिकारी भी रह चुका हूं, इसलिए भी उसके बारे में कुछ आइडिया है कि जल, वायु और ध्वनि प्रदूषण मनुष्य के लिए कितने घातक और हानिकारक होते हैं। अभी हम सुन रहे हैं कि ग्लेशियर पिघल रहे हैं, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग हो रही है, और ऐसे में एक थ्योरी ये भी आ रही है कि जो ग्लेशियर्स के नीचे दबे हुए बैक्टीरिया जो वायरसेस हैं, ये भी अपना जीवंत रूप देकर के इस विकराल समस्या का रूप में हमारे सामने आ रहे हैं। बहुत चिंतन का विषय है और इसमें शुद्ध वायु और शुद्ध जल ये मनुष्य के जीवन के लिए बहुत आवश्यक है। आज के दिवस में चूंकि मैंने स्वयं भी अपने जीवन काल में 3000 से ज्यादा वृक्ष लगाए हैं, उनका पोषण किया है, इसलिए हर किसी प्रतिभागी से विनम्र अनुरोध करता हूं कि आज के दिन या आज का दिन समाप्त भी होने वाला है, तो कल पर्यावरण को एक बूंद अपनी देने के लिए, अपनी तरफ से एक प्रयास करने के लिए एक वृक्ष का रोपण जरूर करें और उसका पोषण भी करें। डॉक्टर दुबे का मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि उन्होंने बहुत व्यस्ततम समय में से हमें समय दिया और वेटलैंड के बारे में भी विशेषज्ञ हैं, जो कि दलदली जमीन को कैसे हम बचा सकें, दलदल होने से बचा सकें। जैसा कि केडी ने बताया कि जहां इस जलीय और स्थलीय मिलन होता है वहां दलदल बन जाता है। तो हमने देखा होगा कई बड़ी नहरों के किनारे भी दलदल होते हैं, नदियों के किनारे होते हैं, समुद्र के किनारे होते हैं, जिससे कि तमाम तरीके की दुर्घटनाएं भी होती हैं। पर्यावरण के साथ साथ हमारे पृथ्वी को भी बहुत विनाश की आशंका रहती है। ऐसे में ये विषय बहुत उचित है चर्चा करने के लिए, और आज का ये व्याख्यान पर्यावरण पे कुछ न कुछ चिंतन करने के लिए बहुत उपयोगी होगा, ऐसी मेरी पूरी भावना है। और मैं शुभकामनाएं देते हुए डॉक्टर दुबे का एक बार फिर अभिनंदन करते हुए श्री कुलदीप पाठक प्रोफेसर जो हैं हमारे, और उनकी टीम जिन्होंने इस पूरे कार्यक्रम का आयोजन किया, इस बहुत अच्छे विषय पर एक वेबिनार कराने का आयोजन किया, आप सभी को बधाई और शुभकामनाएं देते हुए मैं अपने शब्दों को विराम देता हूं। जय भारत, जय हिंद।
थैंक यू सो मच सर। आपका मोटिवेशन हमारे लिए हमेशा एक बहुत बड़ा पुश का काम करता है। And yes, of course, thank you for giving opportunity us to organize this event. So thank you so much, sir. And yes, before I start this webinar, I like to tell that session would be of 40 to 45 minutes, and followed by some question answer, or it will be interaction between the participants and the speakers. So I request all the audience to keep their questions in their hand, and once the presentation from the, I guess, honorable guest speaker, he ends that, and whenever he gets over, you can post your questions in the chat box, and we will take your questions at the end of the session, I guess. So now I would like to request the honorable guest speaker of this session, the respected Dr. Dubey sir, to please enlighten us that how we can save the wetlands, how or what we can contribute to wetland conservations. Respected Dr. Dubey.
Thank you, Dr. Pathak. Thank you, Rathod sir, and thank you for having me for the session. Am I audible clearly, sir?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for having me, it's a privilege for me to be speaking to so many students. It has always been my interest to speak with the students and to tell them, to share with them whatever little that I have learned for wetland conservation through this little time that I have actually been working on wetlands. So to start with, I'll share my presentation in a couple of minutes. But before that, I would like to tell as to why I have chosen this particular topic about my organization, about little bit about my work, and why this work, why this wetland conservation is so important for us to take up, and how you can contribute towards wetland conservation as a student. So basically, as Dr. Pathak told you that, and I'll take you through the official definitions, and I'll also explain as to what wetlands are, why they are so important. But अभी जब हम बात कर रहे थे carbon sequestration की, and we were talking about the glaciers receding, we are talking about the global warming, we are talking about zoonotic diseases now cropping up. One of those we are experiencing as pandemic. All those things have certain link to these wetlands. When we talk about carbon sequestration and global warming, so you'd be surprised to know that the most productive ecosystem on this planet and the ecosystem with largest carbon sequestration potential are the wetlands. So when we talk about our environment, when we talk about controlling the global warming, when we talk about controlling the impacts of climate change, then probably wetland conservation is the most significant thing that you can do. I will give you statistics as to how much carbon does a wetland sequester per unit area. It is approximately 1,600 times more than the terrestrial ecosystem. So if you restore, if you plant 16,000 trees and restore one wetland, it is probably equal. The theme for today is restoration of ecosystems. And of all the ecosystems, I think the wetland ecosystem is something that needs to be restored on a priority basis. And through my presentation, I'll tell you why. What is the need? What is the urgency? So with your permission, sir, I would like to share my screen and my presentation.
Please, sir.
All right, so as Dr. Pathak told you guys that I work with an organization called WWF India, Worldwide Fund for Nature, and it's an international organization with offices in 106 nations. The secretariat for this in India is in Delhi, and we work on multiple thematics. For tiger conservation in India, we are the largest organization. In terms of conservation organizations also globally, we are the largest organization. And I look at the wetlands portfolio. And for wetlands, as Dr. Pathak said, that we are the knowledge partners for Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, which is the apex organization for wetland conservation in India. Additionally, the Ministry of Jal Shakti, the Namami Gange program, National Mission for Clean Ganga. We are working for wetland conservation and restoration. In addition to that, I would like to tell over here that there is an international treaty between 116 nations as of now to conserve and protect the wetlands, because wetlands are seen as a as a global shared resource. It's, I mean, if there is a wetland at the backyard of your home, it is not a local resource. It is actually a resource which is shared by everybody globally. Because in later slides, I'll tell you that these wetlands are actually home to a large number of migratory birds, which play a very significant role in global ecology. So, there was a treaty between 116 nations, and India is a signatory to that convention. That convention is known as Convention on Conservation of Wetlands, and because it was signed in a city called Ramsar in 1972, it is popularly known as the Ramsar Convention. So, Ramsar Convention in every country has a focal point, and we are the focal point in India for the Ramsar. So because of this, I get an opportunity to work on multiple wetlands across the country. And I would like to share my experiences and whatever little that I have actually learned through this experience. So let's understand what are wetlands. I'll just give you the official definitions, and I will briefly explain to you as to what wetlands are and why they are important. So the Ramsar Convention says that all the areas of marsh, fen, peatland or water, whether they are natural or artificial, whether they are permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing. So static water means lakes, puddles, geels, ponds, or flowing. So it could also include rivers. With water which is fresh, brackish, or salt water. So it could be fresh water, it could be a part of an ocean, it could be brackish water, something like Chilika that we have, which includes areas of marine water, the depth of which at low tides does not exceed 6 meters. So essentially, the wetlands, how they differ from other water bodies is that the wetlands are relatively shallower water bodies, and which makes them highly productive. Now, as far as the definition of wetlands in India is concerned, it's the same definition. The only difference is what is marked in red. In India, we do not include the river channels, paddy fields, and human-made water bodies and tanks, which are specifically constructed for drinking water purposes, or for aquaculture, or for irrigation water purposes, or for salt production. This is more to do with management rather than anything else, because these kind of water bodies are under the ownership of different stakeholders, and that is why the ministry says that they don't want to get into a conflict situation with other stakeholders, and that is why they have actually excluded. But technically, all these water bodies are also wetland. Let's talk about why wetlands are important. So let's talk about their key facts. So wetlands are, as I said, rich reservoirs of biodiversity. They are home to more than 40% of the total plant and species that are known to human beings. Over 1 lakh freshwater species have been identified thus far. And among all the wetlands, as I said, the coastal wetlands, the wetlands which are, coral reefs kind of areas, those are the most biologically diverse places, and they are the most productive ecosystems on this planet. When we talk about productivity, productivity is defined as number of carbon atoms fixed per unit area per unit time. So when I say that these are the most productive ecosystems, they also emphasize that if we restore these wetlands, they are the ecosystems which will be able to sequester the maximum amount of carbon on this planet. And that is why if you want to protect your environment against the ill effects of climate change, probably restoration and conservation of wetlands are your best bet. And you need to protect these wetlands, because 30% of the known fish species, with 200 new freshwater species discovered annually, live in these wetlands. Many at-risk amphibians and reptiles, migratory and resident birds. So the wetland birds are the ones that migrate throughout the world, and through pollination, they actually help the global biodiversity. So very, very important to maintain these wetlands. Thousands of plant species and many endemic species are found in these wetlands. So let's understand why biodiversity matters. I mean, I'm a human being who's living in a Class A city. Uh, Seldom get to see a wetland in my life. So how does it matter to me, you may ask? So, when we talk about the wetland vegetation, this wetland vegetation, the wetlands which are present in the floodplains of the river make your water table potable. They improve the water quality by filtering the pollutants. I'm not going to get into the details how it does, but the wetlands are very, very important to maintain the water quality of your rivers. Wetlands also provide livelihoods to almost 1 billion people and feed the world. So when we talk about livelihoods, livelihood options like aquaculture, like fish cultivation, water chestnut cultivation, a lot of things are actually done in the wetlands which support the livelihood. Then around 30% of the total land-based carbon are stored in peatlands, which are a type of wetlands. Lakes and rivers, they supply food and medicines, of course. And at an estimate which was made, I believe, in 2015 by the Ramsar Convention, the ecosystem services provided by wetlands is worth $47 trillion annually, and which has increased substantially ever since. And this is much more than the forests or the deserts or the grasslands. So I believe this must have made things more clear and into mind that wetlands are actually much more than swamplands that we generally perceive these as. So जब हम दलदलों की बात करते हैं, these are much more than simple swamplands. So it is an emergency, despite the fact that the wetlands are so important for every aspect of our life. The wetlands are vanishing. The wetlands are going away, and the wetlands are vanishing actually 3 times faster than the forest. There's a LPI, the Living Planet Index, that WWF India comes up with every 3 years, and the LPI, which was released in 2020, says that the wetlands are now vanishing almost 1.5 times more than what it was vanishing last time, that was in 2018. So the rate of diminishing of wetlands is actually increasing on an exponential rate. And these are some staggering numbers which are given by the Ramsar site. Since 1970, globally, 35% of the wetlands have disappeared. And if you talk about in last 300 years, we have lost around 87% of the wetlands. And what causes this wetland loss? Well, it is the greed of human beings that is causing the loss of the wetlands, because wetlands are generally perceived as areas where mosquito breed, areas which are wasteland, and as our cities, as our municipal areas, as our towns, even villages, as they are growing, we are actually reclaiming wetlands, draining out the water that is present in them, and using it for agriculture, using it for construction. So conversion of wetlands for non-wetland uses are probably the main cause of loss of wetlands. Pollution, overexploitation of resources, invasive species like water hyacinth and other species, and impacts of climate change leading to erratic rainfall are some of the causes also of the losses of wetland across the world. And I will not go through this slide because I don't want to, during this pandemic time, I really don't want to depress you with further, negative news. But let us see as to what is it that wetland gives us. So wetland provides services under 4 different subheads, broader subheads. Provisioning means something that has been directly given to you. It provides you with that. So wetland ecosystem provides you with fresh water. I come from a city in central India called Bhopal, And in Bhopal, around 30% of the water is supplied with, with a wetland, which is Ramsar site. Another wetland which has been identified by government of MP supplies water to the city that you guys come from, in Gwalior. So, many cities across India are supplied with water which is coming from wetlands. It provides you fishes, it provides you water chestnut, it provides you, lotus, which is a source for food, provides you fuel, it provides you fiber, provides you a lot of genetic resources, natural medicines and pharmaceuticals. A lot of wetland vegetation is known to have a medicinal property. Plants like Polygonum, Trapa, they're actually being used for production of medicines. And of course, clay, mineral, and aggregate harvesting is something that wetlands provide. Additionally, they regulate the local climate, the global climate. It regulates the water inflow and outflow. It actually reduces the flood and the impacts of storms. Some of the wetlands in coastal regions are known to reduce the impacts of tsunami. And the wetland vegetation regulates the erosion. And of course, water purification is something that wetlands also do. When we talk about cultural heritage, we know that a lot of wetlands have a lot of cultural values, especially the wetlands. If you talk about our own country, then the wetlands which are located in higher regions, in higher altitudes, are actually, they are worshipped as sacred groves. I'll show you some photographs also. Of course, recreation and tourism, places like Somorari, Sokar, Pangong So, movies are shot around the wetlands. Nainital is a perfect example for a wetland being used for recreation and tourism. It has a large aesthetic value. In Bhopal, if you ask anybody where do you want to go, every second person will tell you that you go to the lake view. The wetlands have spiritual and religious values. It has inspirational values. Social relations in many areas are built around these wetlands. And a lot of education and research is being actually carried out in these wetlands. And when we talk about the supporting values, the wetland actually supports soil formation. Primary production, of course, as I said, is one of the most important ecosystem services that are provided by these wetlands. A lot of nutrient recycling is done in these wetlands. A lot of water cycling is done in the wetlands. And the most important supporting system that wetlands provide is provision of habitat. It provides habitat to a large biodiversity, which is important for sustenance of life on this planet. So this is what a typical wetland looks like, and an example of how wetlands provide these large number of ecosystem services. So when you have this kind of a wetland, if you're able to see this is a wetland, this is a river, and this is where the water from the higher elevations, from mountains, from the catchment area of the river comes from. And these type of wetlands are known as floodplain wetlands. They are just one type of wetland ecosystems. But how does it help in maintaining the water quality? So when the water comes from this area, it takes with it, because of the force, the stream energy, it erodes a lot of soil, a lot of sediments, a lot of pollutants, which if this wetland would have not been there, would have directly gone into your river. But this wetland actually reduces the velocity of the water, reduces the speed of the water here. And this actually allows some time for the sediments, for the pollutants to settle down at the bottom, which is utilized, which is once, it is broken down by the bacteria and is then utilized by these aquatic vegetation and is actually converted into more usable form, which sustains the ecology. So when, today I've heard that, even my organization organized competitions for students by the name of best out of waste. So whatever waste product is there, you make something useful out of it. This is one of the perfect examples of best out of waste. So what otherwise would have actually polluted your river is actually converted into something which is very usable, which is very life-giving for this planet by these wetlands. So very, very important ecosystems. Now, some statistics about wetlands in India. So India has a staggering number of more than 7.5 lakh wetlands, which covers around 1 crore of hectares of wetland area. If we talk about the total area covered, so Lakshadweep has the maximum area covered under wetlands, followed by Andaman and Nicobar and Gujarat. And Mizoram surprisingly has the least percentage of wetlands in its geographical area. Now I'll take you through some of the beautiful, some not so beautiful pictures of wetlands across the country. And in the due course, we will also talk about the types of wetlands in India. This is a wetland which is located at a very high altitude, as you can see, and this you see the prayer flags along the wetlands. So short while ago, I was talking about wetlands having socio-cultural and religious significance. This is a wetland of social and religious importance. A wetland located in Arunachal Pradesh at an altitude of 4,600 meters, I believe. So these are high altitude wetlands. This is a wetland near the famous Sela Pass of Arunachal Pradesh. This is the famous, very famous Pangong Lake. This is the Sokar wetland in Ladakh. So all these are high altitude wetlands. This is probably the most important bird abode in the world, definitely in India. This is, every conservation acronym that you can give to a wetland, it has everything. It is a Ramsar site to start with. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a wildlife sanctuary. It is a bird sanctuary. It's an important bird area. It's a national park. So this is located in Bharatpur district of Rajasthan, known as the Keladev National Park. So these are wetlands with very, very high conservation and significance because of the sheer biodiversity it supports. This wetland alone supports more than 1.5 lakh birds annually, which belong to almost 350 to 400 species. So very, very important ecosystem these kind of wetlands are. These are some wetlands with high cultural significance, wetlands which are 300, 400, perhaps 1,000-year old, been constructed by, the kings of that time and are preserved for posterity. These are wetlands which fill our urban spaces. Almost every city that we have has urban wetlands and which are on sharp decline. A classical example of that is the city of Bangalore, which had almost 800 wetlands 50 years ago. And, the UN has declared that the day zero for Bangalore is coming in very fast, which means it will run out of the groundwater that is there very, very soon. And one of the very, very important causes of running out of the groundwater is the loss of urban wetlands, because these wetlands are also responsible for recharge of groundwater. This is a wetland ecosystem in Delhi, Gurgaon to be precise. And you can see the kind of biodiversity. You can already see around 4 or 5 different species of birds living in close vicinity of high-rise buildings. Another urban wetland. And some very, very beautiful pictures. I mean, these are the pictures that actually prompted me to join the field of conservation, and probably would also prompt you to take up conservation of some sort. And what is it that you can do is something that I will tell towards the end of my presentation. So these are the beautiful painted storks which are nesting. You can see some young ones also. So these are the breeding colony of the painted stork in Kevala National Park. You'd be surprised to know that some wetlands actually house mammals like freshwater dolphins. This is a very, very, very rare photograph. This is a photograph of an Indus River dolphin. Indus River dolphin has been recognized as critically endangered species by IUCN. Only two countries in the world have these populations, Pakistan and India. Pakistan, at a rough estimate, has around 1,500 individuals. In India, there are only 11 individuals of these species, and this is one of those 11 individuals. So very, very rare photograph that you'd get to see. A lot of mammals are supported by these wetlands. You can actually see a spotted deer feeding onto aquatic vegetation within a wetland out here. A lot of aquatic bird species, otters, benthic macroinvertebrates, which are responsible for nutrient recycling in the wetlands, submerged aquatic vegetation, which is the primary producer in wetland ecosystems, are some of the glimpses of the biodiversity that the wetland actually presents. The wetlands are, as I said, the hotspots of biodiversity, and this is the migration path of the birds. So the wetlands are also the hotspots of these migratory birds. India, as you see, falls into this Central Asian flyway. This is India. And the birds from as far as Siberia and some birds even from North Pole fly all the way to India. The highest flying bird in the world that flies over Mount Everest are also seen in the wetlands of India. The Bharatpur pictures that I showed, even Bharatpur has a very healthy population of these birds. These are known as bar-headed geese. So migration of birds is a very interesting phenomenon if you study in detail. But when we talk about migratory birds, then these are the wetland birds that actually migrate. And that's what make the wetlands, of global significance. Because if we lose a wetland in India, it will not only have an impact locally, but would also have an impact on the bird that is coming from Mongolia, for example. So wetlands are very, very important. And these are some of the photographs of the migratory birds. This is a Eurasian coot that comes in India from Europe. This is a spot-billed duck, which is also resident, but also migrates from trans-Himalayan regions in India. These essentially breeds in wetlands in trans-Himalayas. This is a black-naped ibis, an oriental darter, which is a local migrant. So enough of pretty pictures. I would now like to take you through as to what we have done to our wetlands. So when we're talking about, the Ramsar Convention, the Ramsar Convention identifies the wetlands which are of global significance, which are internationally important. India has got 42 such wetlands, and this is one of those wetlands. You can see the apathy of this wetland. There is no water in this wetland, despite the fact that it is located in an area which sees the maximum amount of flooding in India. So this is a wetland located in Guwahati. This is a wetland called the Borbi, which is a Ramsar site, which is the only Ramsar site in the state of Assam. And you can see in summers there is no water, and the only reason why there is no water in this wetland is that the people have actually, during the summers, channelized this water into their homes. This is another picture. All the solid waste from the city of Guwahati is actually being dumped into this wetland. And out here, I'm not sure if you can see this particular bird. This is a greater adjutant stork. Again, a bird which is critically endangered as per the IUCN Red List. And all these birds are actually feeding into this, and their populations is on a constant decline because of feeding onto the pathogens which are actually contacted through these solid waste. Believe me, this is a wetland. this ground that you see is a wetland area. And you would also see the river that used to feed into this wetland. This is Muradabad. This is a wetland which is located in Muradabad city. You see this? This is a river which used to feed that wetland. So as you see, we are actually doing everything that we can to destroy, degrade these wetlands from all across. Be it a Ramsar site, be it a local wetland, we are completely destroying these wetlands. And the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, which is the apex authority, is trying to conserve and protect these wetlands along with the Ramsar Convention and along with the non-governmental organizations like WWF India, like Wetlands International, and we try to join hands with a lot many people, including the local citizens, and we believe that we cannot conserve the wetlands. We, as in people who are just responsible for wetland conservation as per the law. Such kind of organizations are not sufficient because you've got staggering 7 lakh wetlands across the country. Impossible for us to conserve each and every one of them. It is you people, it is you students, and it is up to the education institutes like the Vikrant Group, which has actually taken these kind of initiatives through which we can actually conserve and protect these wetlands. And somebody would ask us to what I can do. I mean, it's very easy to say that protect a wetland, but can I really meaningfully contribute towards the conservation of wetland? So I will, unlike just giving lecture, just giving you, some data on wetlands, I can actually tell you as to what you can do on an individual level to conserve and protect these kinds of wetlands. So before that, I'll just take you through the approach and the strategy of Ministry for Wetland Conservation. So strategy for wetland conservation in India has a 4-pronged approach. The number one of which is the inventorization of wetlands and preparation of what is known as brief documents. It's a statutory requirement as per the wetland rules. The second thing is, once you identify the wetlands, you prepare what is known as a wetland health card. Third one is the enrollment of wetland mitras, the friends of wetlands. And fourth approach is the preparation of an integrated management plan. So where is it that you can actually support? So when we talk about a management planning, because if you want to manage a wetland, if you want to conserve a wetland, you have to have a plan. And as per the NPCA guidelines, what you need to do is describe the wetland and its values, identify the threats, you define the institutional arrangements, you identify the management actions, and then you go on for budget and financing. Again, you would ask me, isme main kya karu? So what you can do is you can become what is known as wetland mitras, and these are actually been identified task force by Ministry of Environment and Forest, and every state in India has what is known as a state wetland authority. So you can actually enroll yourself as a wetland mitra. And who is a wetland mitra? Wetland mitra is actually nothing but motivated volunteers, and which could be it could be from any stakeholder group. It could be student, it could be a teacher, it could be a professor, it could be a fisherman who's living around the wetland. He or she could be just about anyone, but has a deep passion towards the wetland, who loves nature, who wants to protect these wetlands. And they come together and help the wetland. This is the constitution of wetland mitras. It could be, as I said, students, of course, are the best task force for for these wetlands. And what you can do as a wetland mitra. So we've enrolled ourselves as a wetland mitra. So what do we do? So as I said, the strategy, the preparation of management plan goes with the first step towards that is mapping of wetlands. And if I am having a wetland in a vicinity of my house, or there's a wetland that I know, and perhaps it's not there on the government records, what I can do is to start with, I can just take a few photographs of that, submit it to the State Wetland Authority, say that here is one wetland in my vicinity, at least recognize that as a wetland. So that gets registered. And if that gets registered as a wetland, then there is nobody can actually encroach upon those wetlands. So there'll be no net loss of that wetland area. So this is the first thing that you can actually do for that wetland. Now, most of the students that are there in these universities like yours are good at geospatial mapping. GIS is something that is there in our curriculum in just about everything. So if you are having an expertise in geospatial mapping, you can go one step forward and you can actually map these. There are a lot of open resource maps that are available. So you can actually prepare a map of your wetland, the wetland that is in your vicinity. Within your university, you can form a group where you can actually adopt a wetland and or two wetlands and take oath that will protect these wetlands. You can go on and do ground truthing survey of these wetlands. You can actually go out on the wetlands and see what the wetland health are. And assessment of wetland health is also made very simple by the ministry. I'll take you through that also. You can actually do a stakeholder perception survey. You can talk to the people, ask them what are some of the issues that are facing these wetlands, and you can actually prepare a report based on this, which you can submit to the state wetland authority. You can also carry out something that is known as the wetland health assessment. So wetland health is actually governed by the change in the wetland area, the change in hydrology, change in water quality, biodiversity, and governance. So catchment health is actually nothing but recording what are the anthropogenic disturbances. So to put it in very simple terms, around the wetlands, if you find solid waste disposal, if there are encroachments, this is something that you record in catchment health. And there is a form that you actually fill in. Similarly, when we talk about water quality, some chemical, physical, and biological parameters, which could be very easily done with simple water test kits, which are available with most of the universities and colleges. Biota health, you just observe the birds, you just observe, the macrophytes, the aquatic vegetation. That will give you a very fair idea about the health of the biota. And governance, you actually can go talk to the people who are responsible for the wetland management and see if, a map is available, a wetland management plan is available. More often than not, you'll find that there is no management plan which is available for a wetland. So you can record that into this format. It's a very, very easy format. And based on these wetland health cards, you can actually submit it to the state wetland authority or the Ministry of Environment and Forest or knowledge partners organizations like us. And this can actually go a long way in conservation and management of these wetlands. And based on this wetland health card, based on the data that you provide us, we can actually prioritize the wetlands that have to be taken up for conservation and management. So this is how you prioritize the wetlands based on the wetland health score, and which you as a wetland mitre can actually participate and play a very, very significant role in. And when I say that, this is something that we have tried, tested, and done in different parts of the country. These are some of the pictures. So you can see this particular gentleman is from Gram Panchayat, and this is our staff. The other three persons are from the local community who are not really trained in wetland conservation by any means, but they are a part of the conservation initiative. And this is a wetland that we've restored in Bangalore. These are employees from corporate world who are helping us out with wetland health assessments. These are school students who are learning and then carrying out wetland health assessments on their own. This is the community perception survey in Ladakh, the local communities who are dependent on these wetlands. So with this, I end this presentation. I thank all of you for the patient hearing. And on this occasion of the World Environment Day, I would urge you to protect what are the most productive ecosystems on this planet and a very, very important part of all the ecosystems on this planet. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dubey. It was really so interesting and knowledgeable indeed. And I can see there are so many questions in the chat box, and so at last what I can do, I would request the participants who really want to interact directly with the professor. I'm allowing everyone. You can unmute yourself or whatever you want to ask, whatever your questions are. Please ask directly to the Dr. Dubey. Meanwhile, I can read some questions in the chat box also. There's a participant, Mr. Gurudeep Singh ji is asking that specify some plants and fish species which can help to purify quality of water naturally. So,
all right,
if you can answer.
I'll do that. So, there are plant species like typha. There are plant species like water hyacinth, iconic Tessipus. Plant species like Phragmatis, which are typical wetland species, which are known to naturally purify the water. In fact, there is a treatment technology which is known as constructed wetlands or artificial wetlands, which is based on this aquatic vegetation. So the water which is polluted is passed through these constructed wetlands, and it actually is as good as a traditional wastewater treatment technique. So a lot many plants, especially plants like typha and all, they are good for purification of water. When we talk about fishes they do not directly purify the water, but what they do is there's an entire cycle of nutrient recycling in the wetlands. So the pollutants that are there, if you talk about sewage have nitrogenous and phosphoric waste, which is converted into nitrates and phosphates by the bacteria, which is taken up by either the macrophytes or the algae which are present in the wetlands, and these algae are actually eaten away by fishes. So, and fishes are actually commercially important. So, if the fishes were not there in the ecosystem, this would actually go back to the system and keep the water polluted. But when you're taking out fishes and eating these out, these are actually offloading a lot of nutrients from the ecosystem. So just about every fish that survive on aquatic plants, play the significant part in the improvement of water quality.
Right. So there is another question. I won't take much questions, sir, because two more speakers are already joined. So I like to take one more question. So it's asking. There is a person asking that do what wetland also help to naturally treat chemical contaminants arrive due to drainage of wastewater with it. So
it does, yes, it does. So as I replied in one of the earlier questions, that there is a entire wastewater treatment technology which replicates what a wetland does in natural systems. So constructed wetlands are something which are used for wastewater treatment, and also the natural wetlands have this property of treating the wastewater. So yes, it does.
So yes, well, thank you so much, sir. I know that you were so much busy with some of your official stuffs, but somehow you have managed your time for us. So I really pay my gratitude to you, and specifically to Dr. Rahul, who has been the key person who made me, connect with you. So thanks